Friends and family are mourning the loss of Pascal McFadden, also known as Frenchie by many people in Labrador. McFadden passed away on Monday. He's probably best known as the longtime owner of Frenchie's, the recreation shop in Happy Valley Goose Bay. But for those close to him, he was so much more. This morning we have a friend of Frenchie's himself. George Rogers is in our studio to tell us more about Pascal McFadden. Good morning, and thanks for coming in.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, and I want to extend my condolences, first of all, and I appreciate you chatting with us under the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about Pascal. How long do you know him?
I'd say about 40, 45 years, probably. Every bit of that. Back in the early 70s, when I bought my first snowmobile, I think it was a 1970, early 70s Kawasaki Drifter snowmobile, and I bought it off Pascal. And from that moment on, I dealt with him for a lot of years after that, and Polaris and Yamaha machines ever since, and became pretty good friends over the years. So,
what did you think of him? What was your first impression?
He was a tough Frenchman. He had for me, he was a Frenchman getting along in an English world. So he had his little moments where he was trying to cross languages, sort of thing, and he had a little bit of difficulty getting his terminologies out. Speaking half French and half English, but. Yeah. But we did, and became good friends over the years, and like I say, he was an exceptional man. So,
now tell me a little bit about, the background of his nickname is pretty obvious, I guess, but tell me a little bit more about how he became known as Frenchie.
I think from what I know about him, he started in business back in the early 70s here with a partner, Claude Moreau, and the two of them being French. I think that's where it derived now I'm not sure, someone probably clarified this, but I think that's where the name of their business came from. The fact that two of them were French and started up, in Happy Valley Goose Bay. So right. I think that's where it came from,
But he sort of became known as Frenchie himself, too. Frenchie's the store, Frenchie the man. Yeah,
when they dissolved the partnership, I think, with him and Claude Moreau, years and years ago, and then he continued on as Frenchie's, being French. I guess that the nickname stuck with him and never ever left him, even to this day, when he sold his business a couple of years ago, and, the current owner of Frenchie's Outdoor Shack basically kept that, business line as well, that name, but he's still known. Even he was here probably 3 or 4 weeks a month ago, and that's all we ever knew him by, Frenchie, so.
Now, take me back to the 70s, and Pascal and his partner opened up this shop there, sort of challenging Bombardier with Yamaha, Kawasaki machines. What did you think of that idea?
Well, for him, I guess it had to have been a challenge, being French and, operating in the local area sort of thing and competing with Bombardier. Bombardier is probably the predominant, snowmobile for Labrador for a long, long time. So, but he did really well at it, and he, moved his lines from, he had Kawasaki, he had Polaris, he had, several different things, and then he added more as the years went on. And he became a really respected businessman in the community, for a lot of years. He had his tough moments, too. Like one day, he probably a little bit grumpy and couldn't talk to him. And, he had his good customers and he's bad. So, but that's business, and it was the way he was. So
it sounds like he was a good businessman in that he could see an opportunity and seize it.
Well, he did. He brought his business along for a lot of years, and like I say, it's still a thriving, prominent local business down there now. So he did that. He built it up to where it was today, and his success basically is in his product. So, I had a lot of respect for him.
What was he like as a friend, as a person?
He was pretty good. Some days he was hard to get along with, and others, like I remember, we did a lot of riding together, both on motorcycle and on snowmobiles over the years. And he's an avid motorcycle rider. He loved his Harleys, and we traveled a lot, around on motorcycle trips and whatnot. All I can say about him is that he loved his bikes, he loved his snowmobiles.
Any particular memories you?
Well, when he broke his wrists on snowmobile driving really, really fast one time, trying to compete, with the rest of us, we used to travel around a lot on Sunday afternoons, and he drove his snowmobile into a ditch one time and broke his 2 wrists. So we give him a hard time for a lot of days and weeks to follow, because even his bathroom chores were a little bit difficult for him then at the time. When he had his 2 wrists broke, so we used to torment him and eat, basically having to do all his functions and that for him. So we give him a hard time about that for a lot of time, a lot of weeks.
Broke both of his wrists?
He broke both his wrists when he went into a ditch up behind the base.
And how did he get home?
Oh, we had to arrange all that. So
He couldn't drive himself, obviously.
No. He was a little bit incapacitated. He was. But like I said, I had a lot of good moments. I traveled to Sturgis with him a few times on motorcycle, and he's an avid bike rider. He loved his trips. He just totally enjoyed the motorcycle. Totally enjoyed the snowmobiling. So.
Yeah, I asked if he drove home with broken wrists, and maybe that's a bit of a silly question, but he was a tough guy, wasn't he?
He was a tough guy. Yeah. Really, really strong. You could tell by his handshake that. He was a no-nonsense man, and he's strong as an ox. And when he got sick years ago, his first problem, that he had, then he started going to the gymnasium after that was all done, and Jesus, if you ever shook hands with him, you'd say, holy cripes, he was as strong as an ox. Really tough man. Tough man.
What are you going to remember most about him?
Like his mixture of his language probably for me would be, like a lot of times he'd be sitting having a conversation with you, all of a sudden someone's insulted, and you'd say to him, like, don't be insulted by it. He just thought that was the word that he was supposed to use, being French, and right. Trying to put a French word in with an English sentence, and a lot of times it'd come out wrong, and someone would get a little bit taken aback by the way he spoke, but, for the most part, he never meant anything harm, he's going to be missed, really going to be missed.
It must have been difficult, too. I mean, we talked about the difficulties in starting a business from scratch, but it must have been a bit of a challenge, too, trying to navigate in this new language and get that under the... what do you think that says about him?
Well, I mean, he even to this day, you could tell he was strong in the French language sort of thing. Right? So back in the 70s, it must have been extremely difficult for him. I don't know if his partner at the time spoke way better English than him, but he could speak English. But I think he adapted better and better as the years went by. So it must have been difficult.
People don't always have a tolerance when they hear the French accent either. They're kind of dismissive sometimes. So he had to deal with that probably.
Yeah, basically it's the same as you trying to put a French version to an English statement, and you're trying to fit it. And he was the same way. He'd put the wrong word, and sometimes when he spoke, and you'd look at him and say, well, what do you mean by that?
Yes. But
for the most part, I think he did fairly well, and he was extremely successful over the years. And all you can say that we lost a good man there. Like I say, he had his days as well as all of us, but. For the most part, like I say, he was a really good man.
Well, when you look back at his legacy, what do you want people in Happy Valley Goose Bay to know about him and remember about him?
His strong personality, really strong. He when he sat in your presence, that you knew that he was a tough individual, and he knew his stuff. I mean, he did a lot of behind the scenes stuff, with his own snowmobiles, with his own bikes. Like he did most all his stuff himself. He had a lot of little small projects on the go even after he sold his business, and so, he was always kept fairly busy. I was extremely surprised when this came about the other day. It's devastating when you really think about it, because I thought that he was in exceptional condition, and, so I'm really shocked and surprised when I heard the news the other day. And I'm sure a lot of it, like, he has a lot more closer friends than I, around town, and it must be devastating to them as well, and the family, so... Yeah, it'll be a bad loss. I miss him, so.
Well, I do appreciate you telling us a little bit about him. Thank you so much for coming in.
Like I say, there's a lot more guys probably who have a lot more stories to tell about him, like his friends. He used to travel with Lloyd Mansfield and a few of the guys around Happy Valley Goose Bay, and I'm sure they'd have a lot more stories to tell him about him, so. But anyway, I appreciate the fact that you get me come in and speak a few words, so.
George Rogers was a longtime friend of Pascal McFadden. George, thanks again for coming in. Pascal McFadden, otherwise known as Frenchie by so many people. He died Monday morning in Ottawa. He was 71.